Welcome back, Guardians. In today's report, we will begin to cover the epic saga of the Hive transformation and billion-year conquest across the cosmos. The study and interpretation of the Books of Sorrow are nothing short of difficult. Often, there are contradictions and cryptic passages, or sometimes there are a slew of tangents that make the entire epic hard to follow. This report will attempt to provide a quality narration through the saga while dissecting its various intrigues and fantastical intricacies. To start, we will begin with the first few books and their correlating chapters, but be warned, what we are about to witness is the death of hope and the spawn of brutality, as the Krill would slowly allow themselves, perhaps out of need, to become the Hive we make war with today. The saga of the Krill people began on a gas giant in a system unknown, but seemingly impossible distance from our own. The planet, called Fundament, was an inhospitable place, a world in which the clouds sought to eat you, and the land at your feet was no more than paper between your toes and an ocean of hostility. Everything, perhaps by design, on this planet sought to end creation, sought to remove survival as a possibility for any so unlucky to be born there. But life, just like in the case of humanity post-collapse, seeks out a way, sketches itself by the fingernails under the stone of time, proving it can exist regardless of the obstacles. Transcribed by Zero when describing the nature of Fundament. A stormjoy. A stormjoy is a living cloud. When it passes over the continent, it lowers its feeding tentacles. On each tentacles are the bait stars. Although light makes you happy, you must avoid it. You will be eaten. Imagine, if only for a moment, that the clouds on Earth were hostile creatures that only sought you out for their nourishment and amusement. Perhaps, to an extent, it can be understood why the Krill sought to leave Fundament and hated the travelers' false promises. After all, what type of god would stand idly by and not deliver a people from needless sacrifice? An apathetic one? Perhaps an aloof one? Or perhaps the traveler is no god at all. The Krill people fought amongst themselves as a series of petty kingdoms and fiefdoms controlled by the constantly shifting continents of Fundament. One such war was that of the Osmium Court, the home of the Tubi Oryx and the Helium Drinkers, both Krill. But that mattered little to a people whose life expectancy was determined more by chance than skill. As it is said by Zero, sister to Arash, they are our species, but they are our enemies. Their knights raid us every day. Helium Drinkers have 2 legs, 2 arms, and 3 eyes, just like us, but they are a bright evil. I want to be a knight and fight them. There is a term there that is an odd way to describe an enemy. The word bright typically does not come to mind when describing a foe, but perhaps the Helium Drinkers were of the light or influenced by it. Keep in mind, this is only conjecture, and without more information, we may never know. But the choice of words seems deliberate, as if there is to be an emphasis of an influence exerted over the Helium Drinkers. Regardless, the first book of the Books of Sorrow showcase a world in which hostility and brutality were character traits and common occurrences. It is not a land of bliss and ease, a far cry to our Earth, even now well past its glory. We know these Krill became the grotesque hive we see today, but if you lived on such a planet and your options of survival were limited, perhaps accepting death should not be your only option. The world of Fundament very clearly influenced, if not designed, the Hive's interpretation of survival of the fittest. You must be strong, you must exert yourself completely, for if you do not, you will perish, and your people's civilization is in mortal danger. The time of the Osmium's court servitude to the helium drinkers was at an end. It was a time of many transitions, but it was also an era of sinister intentions. This was the first mention of the worm, described as a white familiar of the Osmium King, a dead thing with the capability to drive any who tend to it mad. At least, this is how Taox, a sterile mother and master of court politics, describes the Osmium King, stating, "Senility has claimed my lord, the Osmium King. He is 10 and mad. The study of ancient texts consumes him. Today he raves about moons above the storm. Tomorrow he will wander the halls speaking to his familiar, a dead white worm from the deep sea. He keeps it in a glass and he tends to it, and he neglects the duties of a king." But Taox understood from the start that even with heirs apparent in the form of Zero the Knight, Sathona the clever mother, and Arash the navigator, there was little hope for the Osmium court. They were destined to perish under the ruling bloodline. So Taox, in response to the madness of the king and the incompetence or aloofness of the heirs, hatched a ploy that would forever change the path of the Krill. Taox believed that allying herself with the helium drinkers, allowing them to invade the Osmium court, she could rule as a vassal, regent of the new Osmium kingdom, free from the ramblings of a mad king and his dead worm. Unfortunately for Taox, and perhaps the lives of millions, she failed. But the question must be asked, what if Taox had not acted? Would the Krill be the hive we see today? It's a fantasy to think in such potentials, but it is intriguing to discover and decide who may be responsible. Let me ask you a question. What's more powerful than a family of oath makers, of oath keepers? When a hunter takes up the cloak of a fallen comrade, is that not a powerful sign of an oath being forged? In a way, the betrayal of Taox is the first chapter of the three sisters' path to godhood, but it is, in a single moment, an act of family. Seemingly, nothing is more powerful than a blood oath that a sheer will and a tenacious spirit infuse with one another in a solemn promise. And that vow was simple. I am Zero, youngest daughter of the dead king. I will take back my Osmium court and kill the traitor Taox. On my left eye, I swear vengeance. I am Sathona, middle daughter of the dead king. I will take back my home and eat the mother jelly. I will raise my spawn on the corpse of the helium king. On my right eye, I promise this. I am Arash, first daughter of the dead king. I will chase my father's last screamed warning. I will know what changed the motion of our moons. If the end of the world is coming, I will understand why. This blood oath will be the first spawn of the Krill's transformation into the hive. It would set the three sisters on a journey into the deep of Fundament to seek out the promises of the darkness, all in the hopes of returning their bloodline to the rightful place on the Osmium throne. If anything, the first three books of the Books of Sorrow showcase a group of three sisters on a recognizable quest, something we as Guardians could be sympathetic of. In a way, we are on our own path of vengeance, just as the three sisters have begun theirs. This is perhaps even more true now, with the arrival of Gaul and the decimation of our home. But make no mistake, Guardians, these books were written by the Hive for matters of religion and reverence. It is meant to be favorable for the three sisters and to cast those who stood against them in a light of a selfish evil. We may view Taox as a potential ally, but her actions do not describe an individual of the light. They describe someone who believes their cause is just. And if that cause means the death of innocent Krill, of tithes being paid to helium drinkers in the form of those live and enslaved, it all matters not, so as long as Taox can rule. It is difficult from this perspective to view Taox without a skewed vision, one blurred by the evident signs of brutal ambition. As we continue to discuss and digest these books, I ask you, Guardians, simply, what do you believe? Was Taox justified in her actions against a mad king and seemingly inept years? Or is she responsible for the creation of the hive and the ambition of these three sisters? Perhaps, as we continue to investigate these books, we shall be able to answer that question with more clarity. Until then, Guardians, stay safe. Hey everyone, Wally here. If you'd like to support the channel further, please feel free to check out the script link, my Patreon, and the new apparel in the Spreadshirt shop, all linked down below. If you want to join the conversation on our Discord server, we allow everyone in. Like the video if you enjoyed the content, and subscribe for more.